When Flight 447 faced a deadly crisis at 35,000 feet, nobody knew the quiet woman in Seat 14C was Major Phoenix Chin, a decorated fighter pilot who'd flown 150 combat missions. Then she spoke one word that changed everything. Her call sign. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The Boeing 737 shook violently at 35,000 feet. Coffee spilled across tray tables. Overhead bins rattled. A woman screamed, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The voice crackled with tension. "We're experiencing some turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts immediately." But Sarah Chin knew better. This wasn't turbulence. In Seat 14C, she closed her laptop and looked out the window. Her trained eyes caught what others missed: two dark shapes streaking across the sky in the distance. Military aircraft. Moving fast. What's happening? The businessman next to her gripped his armrests, knuckles white. Sarah kept her voice calm. "Just some rough air. It'll pass." She didn't tell him that those weren't commercial planes outside. She didn't mention that the specific vibration pattern meant something else entirely. And she definitely didn't reveal that she knew exactly what kind of aircraft those were: F-16 Fighting Falcons. Because Sarah Chin wasn't just another passenger heading home. She was Major Sarah Phoenix Chin, one of the most decorated fighter pilots in the United States Air Force. But today she just wanted to be invisible. Sarah had boarded Flight 447 from Denver to Phoenix wearing jeans and a navy blazer. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. A laptop bag hung from her shoulder. Nothing about her screamed combat veteran or military hero. That's exactly how she wanted it. Business or pleasure? The flight attendant had asked while serving drinks. "Visiting family," Sarah replied with a smile. Short answers. No details. That was her strategy. The man in 14B, Mr. Thompson, according to his boarding pass sticking out of the seat pocket, was chattier. Mid-50s sales rep type, the kind who couldn't handle silence. "First time to Phoenix?" he asked. "No, I've been before." "What do you do for work?" Sarah paused. This was always the tricky question. "Government work. Pretty boring stuff actually." Mr. Thompson laughed. "Tell me about it." "I'm in insurance." "Nothing exciting about spreadsheets and policy numbers, right?" "Right," Sarah agreed, turning her attention to her magazine. Across the aisle, a young mother bounced a fussy toddler on her knee. "I'm so sorry about the noise," she apologized to Sarah. "Don't worry about it. Kids will be kids." "You're so patient. Do you have children?" "Not yet. Maybe someday." The mother smiled. "You'd be great. You seem really calm under pressure." If only she knew, Sarah thought. If only she knew the kind of pressure Sarah had faced: enemy missiles locked on her aircraft, flames in her cockpit, her wingman's voice screaming in her headset as his plane went down. But that was a different world. Today she was just Sarah, going to visit her sister. No call signs. No combat stories. No questions about what it's like to kill someone or whether she ever gets nightmares. Just a normal woman on a normal flight. Or so she thought. Captain David Wright had been flying commercial jets for 22 years. He'd seen his share of unusual situations. But the radio transmission from Denver Air Traffic Control made his blood run cold. "Flight 447, be advised. We have an unidentified aircraft in your vicinity. Maintain current heading and altitude. Military assets are being deployed." First Officer Mike Torres looked up from his instruments. Did he just say unidentified aircraft? Wright keyed his mic. "Denver Center, Flight 447. Can you provide more details on this unknown aircraft?" Static crackled. Then, -447. Just maintain course. We're sending fighters to investigate. Torres swallowed hard. "Should we tell the passengers?" Wright shook his head. "Not yet. Could be nothing. No point causing panic over a false alarm." But his gut told him this wasn't nothing. Through his headset, Wright could hear military communications bleeding through on adjacent frequencies. Code words. Tactical callouts. The professional urgency in those pilots' voices. Something was very wrong up here. Sarah's fingers tightened on her armrest. She'd heard the engine tone change again, subtle but unmistakable. The pilots were making another course correction. She glanced out the window. There, a glint of silver in the distance, banking hard. Then another. The F-16s were closer now, moving into intercept positions. Her heart rate kicked up, but her face remained calm. Years of combat training had taught her to control her reactions. Never let them see you sweat. Are we turning again? Mr. Thompson asked nervously. Looks like it. This doesn't feel right. I've flown 100 times and it never feels like this. Sarah wanted to tell him he was correct. This wasn't normal at all. This was a military intercept in progress. But she bit her tongue. In the cockpit, Captain Wright listened as Denver Center updated him. Flight 447, you are to deviate 10 degrees right. Acknowledge. Deviation 10 degrees right confirmed, Wright responded. He turned to Torres. Something's definitely happening. I'm hearing fighter chatter on the emergency frequencies. Torres adjusted his headset, trying to pick up the transmissions. Fragments came through, visual contact. No response on guard. Civilian traffic at your 3 o'clock. Wright's jaw tightened. In 22 years, he'd never had military jets this close to his aircraft during a commercial flight. High above the commercial airliner, Captain Jake Viper, Harrison pushed his F-16 into a steep bank. His radar had locked onto the target, a small single-engine aircraft flying erratically. Denver Center Viper. I have visual contact with unknown aircraft. It's a Cessna 172, no visible tail number. Aircraft is not responding to guard frequency. Copy that, Viper. Can you determine pilot status? Harrison brought his fighter alongside the small plane, close enough to peer into the cockpit. What he saw made his stomach drop. Denver Center, pilot appears unconscious. Slumped over controls. This is a medical emergency. Aircraft is on autopilot heading directly toward Phoenix metropolitan area. The controller's voice remained professional, but Harrison could hear the tension. Understood, Viper. We need that aircraft diverted from populated areas. What's your recommendation? Harrison checked his fuel and position. The Cessna was descending through 28,000 feet. In minutes, it would be over downtown Phoenix, a city of 1.6 million people. Requesting rules of engagement, Denver Center. There was a pause. Everyone knew what he was really asking. If they couldn't divert this aircraft, would he have authorization to shoot it down before it crashed into a shopping mall or school? Stand by, Viper. We're checking on something. Flight attendant Jenny Martinez had worked for the airline for 7 years. She'd handled medical emergencies, unruly passengers, even an attempted hijacking once. But she'd never received an instruction like this. The captain's voice came through her handset, quiet and urgent. Jenny, I need you to bring the passenger in seat 14C to the cockpit. Immediately. Don't alarm the other passengers. Sir? Why? Just do it. Air traffic control specifically requested her by name. They say she's a pilot. Jenny's mind raced as she walked down the aisle. The woman in 14C? She seemed so ordinary. So quiet. Excuse me, ma'am? Jenny leaned down, keeping her voice low. I need you to come with me to the front of the plane. Sarah looked up from her magazine, her expression neutral. Is something wrong? The pilots need to speak with you. Mr. Thompson overheard. Why do they need to talk to her? Jenny ignored him. Please, ma'am. Right now. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt. She could feel every passenger's eyes on her as she followed Jenny up the aisle. Whispers followed her. Why her? What's going on? Is she in trouble? When Jenny opened the cockpit door, both pilots turned to look at her. Are you a pilot? Captain Wright asked without preamble. Sarah hesitated for just a second. Then, yes. Air traffic control says we need you on the radio. There's an emergency situation and they specifically asked for you. Wright handed her a headset. I don't know how they knew you were on this plane, but they did. Sarah took the headset. Her mind was already working through possibilities. An emergency that required a specific pilot? Someone who knew her flight details? This was military. Had to be. She put on the headset. This is the passenger from Flight 447. The controller's voice came back immediately. Ma'am, please identify yourself to the fighter pilot using your military call sign. Sarah's heart sank. There it was. Her cover was blown. She could refuse. Just say she didn't know what they were talking about. Stay anonymous. Stay hidden. But if they were asking for her call sign, lives were at stake. She keyed the mic. Phoenix. This is Phoenix. In the cockpit of his F-16, Captain Harrison's eyes went wide. Say again, he transmitted. This is Phoenix. Phoenix as in? Major Sarah Phoenix Chin? Pause. Then, affirmative. Harrison couldn't believe it. Phoenix was a legend. Every fighter pilot in the Air Force knew her story, how she'd taken a direct missile hit over enemy territory and kept her crippled F-16 flying for 40 minutes with half her systems destroyed. How she'd saved 3 pilots from certain death during a mission that went sideways. How she'd earned more combat medals than most pilots collected in their entire careers. And she was on a commercial flight right now. Phoenix, this is Captain Jake Harrison, call sign Viper. I flew with your squadron during the Afghanistan deployment. You saved my wingman over Kandahar. I remember, Viper. What's the situation? Harrison's professionalism snapped back into place. We have an unconscious pilot in a Cessna 172 heading for downtown Phoenix. Aircraft is descending through 26,000 feet. Pilot is non-responsive to all communications. I need options before this bird crashes into populated areas. In the cockpit of Flight 447, Sarah's mind shifted into combat mode. She looked out the cockpit window, scanning the sky until she spotted the small aircraft in the distance. I have visual on the Cessna, she said calmly. Current altitude approximately 25,000 feet. Rate of descent looks like 800 feet per minute. How long has the pilot been unresponsive? Approximately 10 minutes. Sarah did the math in her head. They had maybe 15 minutes before that plane was in downtown airspace. Less than that before it became impossible to divert safely. Viper, what's your weapon status? 2 AIM-120s, full gun. Captain Wright and First Officer Torres stared at Sarah in shock. She was talking to a fighter pilot like they were on a combat mission together, using terminology and procedures they'd never heard in civilian aviation. Who was this woman? Viper, here's what we're going to do, Sarah said, her voice absolutely steady. Shooting down that aircraft over Phoenix is not an option. Debris field would still be a hazard and we'd be killing an unconscious pilot who might survive a controlled crash. Agreed. What do you recommend? We need to use wake turbulence to push the Cessna off course. Get it heading toward open desert east of the city where it can go down safely. There was a pause. Phoenix, that maneuver's never been successfully executed outside of simulation. I know. I've done it twice in combat situations. Once over Fallujah, once in the Hindu Kush. Both times it worked. Harrison's respect for Phoenix went up another notch. Those weren't training exercises. Those were real-world, life-or-death situations. Walk me through it, he said. Sarah's mind was already 3 steps ahead. You're going to approach from the Cessna's 7 o'clock position, 30 feet above and offset 20 feet to the left. Maintain exactly 250 knots. The wake from your jet will create a rolling disturbance that'll push the Cessna's wing down and start a gentle turn to the right, away from the city. 30 feet is damn close, Phoenix. I know. But if you're too far, the wake dissipates before it affects the Cessna. Too close and you'll flip it. Captain Wright couldn't stay quiet anymore. You're telling him to fly a fighter jet 30 feet from a civilian aircraft? That's insane. Sarah turned to look at him. Captain, with all respect, that unconscious pilot is going to crash into Phoenix in about 12 minutes. This is the only option that doesn't involve shooting down a civilian aircraft or watching it hit a building full of people. Wright saw something in her eyes then, absolute certainty, born from experience he couldn't imagine. This wasn't theory to her. She'd done this before. She'd faced worse. He nodded. Okay. Sarah keyed the mic again. Viper, you ready? Ready, Phoenix. Talk me through it. In the passenger cabin, people were starting to panic. They could see the F-16s clearly now, 2 of them, sleek and deadly, flying in formation with their commercial airliner. Why are there fighter jets? Someone shouted. Are we under attack? I want to know what's happening. Flight attendant Jenny tried to calm them down. Please, everyone return to your seats. Everything is under control. But her voice wavered. She didn't know if everything was under control. She had no idea what was happening in that cockpit. In seat 14C, Mr. Thompson stared out the window at the military aircraft. That woman from this seat, he said to no one in particular. She's up there in the cockpit. Why would they need her? In the cockpit, Sarah was locked in. Every sense, every bit of training, every ounce of experience was focused on guiding Viper through the most dangerous flying she could ask of him. Viper, start your approach. Maintain 250 knots, angle of attack 4 degrees. Copy. Beginning approach. Sarah could visualize it in her mind, the F-16 sliding into position, the invisible turbulence streaming from its wings and fuselage, the delicate physics that could either save lives or end them. Coming up on position, Viper transmitted. Distance 50 feet. Hold your altitude, decrease to 40 feet. 40 feet. Sarah's jaw tightened. This was the critical moment. 35 feet. Watch your drift. 35 feet, steady. Okay, hold position there. Your wake should be hitting the Cessna's left wing in 3, 1, now. For 5 seconds nothing happened. Sarah held her breath. Then Viper's voice came through, excited. Phoenix, it's working. Cessna is banking right, turning away from the city. Sarah exhaled. Maintain your position. Keep the pressure on until it's on a safe heading. Copy that. For 3 more minutes, Viper flew in perfect formation, his aircraft's wake turbulence gently but firmly pushing the smaller plane off its deadly course. Sarah called out micro-adjustments. A foot higher, half a knot slower, hold steady. Finally, Phoenix, Cessna is now on heading 095, away from populated areas. Rate of descent unchanged, but it's over open desert now. Outstanding work, Viper. Denver Center, are you coordinating with emergency services for the crash site? The controller came back. Affirmative, Phoenix. Rescue helicopters are en route. We have paramedics staging in the area. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Viper, break off and resume escort of our commercial flight. Let's make sure everyone gets home safely. Roger that, Phoenix. And, thank you. You just saved a lot of lives. Captain Wright was staring at Sarah like he'd never seen another human being before. Who are you? He asked quietly. Sarah removed the headset and handed it back to him. Just a passenger, Captain. Can I return to my seat now? No. Wright's voice was firm. No, you're not just a passenger. The way you just handled that situation, that was military precision. Combat experience. You're not civilian air traffic control. You're not even a commercial pilot. Sarah met his eyes. I'm Major Sarah Chin, United States Air Force. Fighter pilot. I've flown 150 combat missions. My call sign is Phoenix. Torres whistled low. Phoenix. I've heard that name. You're the pilot who survived a direct missile hit and still brought your plane home. That was a long time ago. 3 years, Wright said. He'd clearly heard the stories too. They still use your mission as a case study at flight school. The impossible flight. Sarah shrugged. I got lucky. That wasn't luck, Major. That was skill. Wright paused. Thank you. For what you just did. You saved that pilot's life and probably dozens of people on the ground. Just doing what needed to be done. Outside the cockpit windows, the 2 F-16s had taken up escort positions on either side of the commercial airliner. Sarah could see the pilots in their cockpits, could almost read their thoughts. They knew who was on this plane now. The word would spread fast in the fighter pilot community. Her anonymous flight was over. Ma'am, Wright said carefully, I'm going to have to inform the passengers what happened. They're terrified down there. They deserve to know they were safe because of you. Sarah's jaw tightened. Captain, please don't. I'm sorry, Major. But they need to know. He picked up the intercom handset before Sarah could protest further. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. The cabin went silent. Every passenger strained to hear. I want to begin by apologizing for the concern you've all experienced. I can now explain what's been happening. There was an emergency situation with another aircraft in our vicinity, a small plane with an unconscious pilot that was heading toward downtown Phoenix. Gasps echoed through the cabin. The military jets you saw were working to divert that aircraft to safety. And they received critical assistance from someone on our flight, someone with exceptional qualifications to help in exactly this type of situation. Mr. Thompson leaned toward seat 14C, then realized it was empty. Where's that woman who was sitting here? Wright continued, I'd like you all to know that we have a genuine American hero aboard Flight 447 today. Major Sarah Phoenix Chin of the United States Air Force, one of the most decorated fighter pilots in our military, was traveling as a passenger. When the emergency occurred, Major Chin provided tactical guidance from our cockpit that helped save the life of that unconscious pilot and prevented what could have been a catastrophic crash in a populated area. The cabin erupted in whispers and exclamations. The woman from 14C? She's a fighter pilot? I was sitting right next to her. Wright wasn't finished. Major Chin has flown over 150 combat missions and is known throughout the military for her skill and bravery. We are honored to have her aboard our aircraft, and I wanted you all to know how fortunate we were today. Jenny stood at the back of the cabin, her hand over her mouth. The quiet woman who'd just asked for water. The woman who'd smiled at the crying baby. She was a war hero. Sarah emerged from the cockpit to find every passenger staring at her. The cabin had gone completely silent. She walked down the aisle toward seat 14C, feeling their eyes on her, hearing their whispered conversations. That's her. She looks so normal. I can't believe it. Mr. Thompson stood up as she approached. Ma'am, Major, I had no idea. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Sarah nodded uncomfortably. Just doing my job, sir. You saved people's lives today. That's what we're trained to do. She slid back into seat 14C and tried to return to her magazine, but it was impossible. The mother across the aisle was crying, holding her toddler close. Other passengers kept glancing back at her, whispering. Then something happened that Sarah had never experienced in all her years of military service. Outside the window, the two F-16s moved into position, one above, one to the side of the commercial airliner. They flew in perfect formation, then executed a precise aerial maneuver. A salute. In military aviation, an aerial salute was the highest honor. It was reserved for the most solemn occasions, funerals of fallen pilots, retirement ceremonies for legendary officers. It was not something done lightly or casually. But Viper and his wingmen were doing it now. For her. The two fighter jets rolled in synchronization, their movements precise and coordinated. They held the formation for exactly 10 seconds, then broke away, wings waggling in the traditional gesture of respect. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back. The entire cabin watched in awe. Several passengers were recording on their phones. Others were simply crying. When the salute was complete, Captain Wright's voice came over the intercom one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed was an aerial salute, an extremely rare honor in military aviation. The fighter pilots wanted to recognize Major Chin's service and her actions today. We are privileged to have witnessed this moment. Spontaneous applause broke out in the cabin. It started with one passenger, then spread until everyone was clapping. Some were standing. The sound was thunderous in the confined space. Sarah sat in seat 14C, tears finally running down her cheeks, accepting the recognition she'd spent the entire flight trying to avoid. Mr. Thompson was crying too. I told you about my boring insurance job, he said through his tears. And all along I was sitting next to someone who. It's okay, Sarah said quietly. You didn't know. But you knew. You knew who you were and you just listened to me complain about spreadsheets. He laughed through his tears. Major Chin, you're an incredible person. When Flight 447 touched down in Phoenix 30 minutes later, Sarah looked out her window and saw something that made her stomach sink. News trucks. Dozens of them. Cameras. Reporters. Somehow word had gotten out even faster than she'd expected. Video of the aerial salute was probably already viral on social media. Captain Wright came on the intercom one last time. Major Chin, airport security is standing by to escort you through the terminal. There are quite a few media requests. Sarah closed her eyes and sighed. So much for a quiet visit with her sister. As passengers deplaned, many stopped to thank her personally. Some asked for autographs. Others just wanted to shake her hand. Sarah accepted their gratitude with grace, though she felt increasingly uncomfortable with the attention. When she finally emerged into the terminal, security officers formed a protective circle around her. Camera flashes exploded. Reporters shouted questions. Major Chin, can you describe what happened? How does it feel to save lives even while off duty? Will you be receiving a commendation for today's actions? Sarah didn't answer any of them. She just walked, flanked by security, through the crowd. But then she saw a familiar face, her sister, Claire, standing at the edge of the chaos with tears streaming down her face. Sarah broke away from the security escort and ran to her. They hugged and Claire whispered in her ear, I told you not to do anything dramatic. Just visit. That's all. Sarah laughed. I was just sitting in my seat, I swear. You're impossible, Claire said, but she was smiling. Come on. Let's get you out of here. Epilogue. The story of the passenger in seat 14C became national news within hours. Video of the aerial salute was viewed millions of times. News outlets called it one of the most dramatic in-flight emergencies in commercial aviation history. The unconscious pilot of the Cessna, a 54-year-old flight instructor named Robert Hayes, survived the crash landing in the desert. He'd suffered a severe stroke mid-flight, but thanks to the quick response and the gentle landing in soft sand, he lived. He made a full recovery and was able to fly again 6 months later. When reporters asked him about Major Chin, he said simply, she saved my life. I owe her everything. Sarah received a commendation from Air Force leadership and a letter of thanks from the governor of Arizona. She did one press conference, answered questions with professional courtesy, then firmly declined all further media requests. But in pilot lounges and flight schools across the country, the story took on a life of its own. It became a legend, the tale of the decorated combat pilot who just wanted a quiet flight home, but ended up directing a rescue operation from 35,000 feet. Whenever young pilots asked about Major Phoenix Chin, their instructors would tell them this story. And they'd always end the same way. She was just a passenger in seat 14C. But when lives were on the line, she showed us what it really means to be a pilot. It's not about the uniform or the rank or the medals. It's about being ready when you're needed. Always. 6 months after the incident, Sarah finally got her quiet flight home. No emergencies. No fighter jets. No cameras waiting at the gate. Just a normal woman in a navy blazer, sitting in seat 14C, sipping water and reading her magazine. But this time, when the flight attendant asked if she was traveling for business or pleasure, Sarah smiled and said, "Pleasure. Definitely pleasure." And for once she meant it.